Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question's to the Premier. Premier, congratulations. Your government's epic public health failure has led to more than 10,000 active COVID cases, including 1,979 reported overnight and a big jump in hospitalisations to 32. In total, more than 70,000 Tasmanians have been infected, including thousands of children and young people with a novel bat virus. 15 people have died since you reopened the border. These were avoidable deaths. Premier, instead of taking steps to prevent infection, you've removed mask-wearing protections, allowing the BA2 subvariant to run rampant. So high is our current case rate that if Tasmania was a country, we'd be in the top 15 nations in the world for cases per capita. Premier, as you know, no child under 12 is fully vaccinated. Vaccines are waning in efficacy. They don't prevent infection, the risk of reinfection or long COVID. Premier, Tasmanians want to know, what is your end game with this virus?
Honourable Premier.
Mr Speaker, I thank the Leader of the Greens for that question, and it does not surprise me that you are still continuing in the same vein that you started over the Christmas period.
Jesus Christ, have you had a look at the numbers?
Where you claim that public health, that the government was engaging in eugenics. It was just a disgrace.
I'm not using it in vain.
No.
Mr. Speaker,
order, Ms O'Connor.
Mr.
You've
Speaker,
asked the question. I expect everybody to listen to the Premier.
Ms O'Connor has raised, Mr. Speaker. The number of people in hospital being treated specifically for COVID has remained relatively stable.
It's spiked overnight.
There are 14 people in hospital that are actually being treated for COVID.
What a load of crap.
In terms of the total number of people in hospital, obviously as COVID...
I actually care about...
Order. Ms O'Connor, if you don't want to be the second leader to leave the chamber this morning, I would stop my interjection.
Mr Speaker, obviously, as COVID spreads more widely, what we are seeing, importantly, is that it is not manifesting as higher rates of serious disease. The level of the number of people in hospital being treated for COVID has remained relatively stable right throughout this, Mr Speaker.
That's right.
But what will happen, Mr Speaker, as people enter hospital over time, because of the spread of the disease, someone breaks their leg, the chances of them entering hospital and having COVID are much higher. But they won't be.
A point of order.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. 45 relevance. People who communicate with the Greens want to know
you will have to take your mask off. I'm sorry, your voice is muffled.
Yes, well, I don't regard this chamber as particularly safe, as you know, Mr Speaker. But people who are worried about the spread of this virus want to know what is the government's
What's the point of order? What's the point of order?
The point of order is relevance. Could he answer the question instead of resorting to personal attacks?
Premier, if you could continue.
You're a specialist. With the greatest of respect, you've made an art form out of them. You have made an art form out of personal attacks. The end game, Mr Speaker, is exactly the outcome that we spoke about when we laid down the plan, Mr Speaker. That was to open our borders safely and successfully and ensure that over time, Mr Speaker, we could transition to where we were living with COVID safely and getting on with our lives, Mr Speaker.
That's right.
That remains our plan. That remains our plan, Mr Speaker.
For everyone to get infected.
And again, Mr Speaker, public health have been clear in their advice, and I would make this point.
Table it.
I would make this point. We had public health again speaking on the radio this morning. I think they were out there publicly again yesterday. They stood with me on Friday, and I've made this point before. Unlike other premiers in other states or first ministers, I have stood with public health every step of the way, Mr Speaker. Every step of the way, Mr Speaker. And in terms of the uptick that we have seen in cases, public health have made it clear on a number of occasions. Last Friday, yesterday, I understand today as well, that the uptick in case numbers is as a result of the more transmissible BA2
Point of order.
variant, Mr.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I think the Premier is misleading the House.
Oh, that's not a
I
point of
cannot
order.
believe Public Health said that removing masks had nothing to do with spread.
Again,
You're out of order.
it's not a point of order, Ms O'Connor.
I think he's misrepresenting
You're out
Public
of
Health.
order.
Mr. Speaker,
Disorderly.
the spread, the higher spreads related to BA2's higher transmissibility, Mr. Speaker.
Nothing to
That
do
is
with masks.
directly from public health,
Nothing
Mr.
to do with
Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, again, sensibly, in terms of masks, the position of public health was that high-risk settings, they remain. In other settings, if you can't socially distance, it's recommended that you wear a mask, which is what we're doing today, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
And I have to say, I thought in a sparsely populated chamber last night, I thought it was highly unfair of you to target a member of the House's staff in the way that you did, Mr. Speaker. Somebody who was following the rules as outlined by public health.
Point of order. Point of order. I
can't
seek the
defend
leave of the
themselves.
House to make a personal
Look at me,
explanation
look at
after
me.
question time. I'm just flagging that I will, because Mr. Bouchard's presence
Well,
in
it's
here
no.
unmasked put us at risk.
Well, the statement can be made after question time and not now.
Rubbish. You don't understand how this virus
Well,
works,
and
Ms. Bouchard.
perhaps in that
Order.
personal explanation you could explain how you got to eugenics and that disgraceful claim over
I've
the Christmas
explained
period,
that.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
That came from Women with Disabilities
We'll
Australia.
go to the member for Braddon.